Good morning. We're going to be talking about sound and silence and how it impacts our lives, how it impacts who we are, and how we can maybe use both to meditate and find our own sense of spirituality. I'm going to talk about silence and sound, and actually to tuck in your mind two different ways. The sounds of the auditory sounds and silence, but also I want you to think about visual sound and visual silence, because they also impact. So is there really much, if any, silence available? No matter where you are, think of the loons calling, or the waves lapping, the rain falling, or the breeze blowing. Even in sensory deprivation, you hear your own blood circulating, your own breathing, your own nervous system working, or, especially in my case, tinnitus. So I never have silence because there's always that sound. And then I want you to think about the range of sounds, from cacophony, that big sounds that really can hurt your ears, at an airport, or maybe even at a rock concert, to more natural sounds of traffic at work, to softer sounds in your yard, to something called absolute silence. And absolute silence is, in science, the absolute no vibration of any kind, anywhere. There'd be no sound and no light because everything is stopped. So, I want you to tuck in your mind two questions. First question is silence comfortable for you or not? And why? What makes silence either comfortable or uncomfortable? What and where? And the second question is, where is or where was your favorite, your best place for contemplation, for connecting to spirituality, your place to center yourself? Why was it a good place? So, sound, silence. The writer and lecturer Sadhguru wrote, "You can sing in silence, you can dance in silence, you can even speak in silence." He says, you can even scream in silence, but don't try that right now, he says. Sound is at the surface, silence is at the core. And he also says there is no word for absolute silence in the English language. Absolute silence means the absence of any reverberation, the absence of life, the absence of creation. So even subatomic particles vibrate. There's always an energy. So silence brings me to one of my favorite poems. And this is by David Bumbaugh. It's called "Silence is an Abnormal State." Silence is an abnormal state. The world is nowhere silent. The wind calls from the treetops and whispers in the beach grass. The world is nowhere silent. Streams laugh aloud, waves roar as they fall upon the beach. Were our ears more finely tuned, we could hear the crack of granite as boulders are reduced to pebbles, pebbles to sand, sand to dust. Were our ears more finely tuned, we could hear the grinding of tectonic plates as they collide, the vibrations in the heart of the atom. The world is nowhere silent. Birds sing and chirp, squirrels chatter, insects hum and whir. They fall quiet only briefly at our approach, a suggestion that silence is a sign of fear. Is it not strange that even as Gaia sings to us, calls to us, shouts at us, we seek wisdom in silence? Is it a measure of our alienation that we retreat into silence, withdraw from the chorus in order to hear the endless, eternal song. There is no such thing as silence. This is what Dallas Taylor, a sound engineer and a podcast producer, said on a TED Talk. He said, "What I've come to understand is there is no such thing as silence. And the person who opened my mind to this idea is one of the most influential composers in history. John Cage has made an impact on artists of many genres, from avant-garde musicians to modern dance to pop music. But despite his reputation, no one was prepared for what he did in 1952 when he created the most daring piece of his career. It was called 4 minutes and 33 seconds. This song is composed in 3 short movements. I will perform a short part of the first movement. Now, some of you are probably wondering, what was that all about? This was a piece that some critics even refused to call music because the entire duration of the piece, the performer plays nothing at all. Well, technically, the performer is playing rests. But to the audience, it looks like nothing is happening. But yet, no matter where you are, you hear something going on. And that's what he was trying to do. John Cage was becoming increasingly interested in chance and randomness, and letting the universe provide the answer to his question, what note should I play next? But to hear the answer the question, first you have to listen. And in the 1940s, listening to the universe was getting harder to do. Muzak. The Muzak company was formed in the 1930s. It really took off, and soon there was constant background noise. It was almost impossible to escape. John Cage realized that people were losing the option to shut out background music. He worried that Muzak would prevent people from hearing silence altogether. In 1948, 4 years before he wrote his infamous 4 minutes, John Cage mentioned that he wanted to write a 4.5-minute long piece of silence and sell it to the Muzak company. Well, it started as something of a political statement or an offhand comment, but his idea struck a nerve and quickly evolved. Cage was starting to think deeply about silence, and then he visited a truly quiet place where he made a startling discovery. He visited an anechoic chamber at Harvard University. Anechoic chambers are rooms that are acoustically treated to minimize sound to almost zero. There are no sounds in these rooms. So Cage didn't expect to hear anything at all, but he actually heard his own blood circulating. Cage realized in that moment that no matter where we are, even our bodies are making sounds. There is no such thing as true silence. As long as in your body, you're always hearing something. How many of you besides me have tinnitus? Yeah. So, we are the people who are blessed to eternal sound, no matter where we are or what we do. What's so often misunderstood about 4 minutes and 33 seconds is people assume it's a joke. But that couldn't be further from the truth, because that sounds different everywhere you play it. And that's a point that John Cage really wanted us to notice. The beauty of the sonic world around us. Silence. Silence is the absence of ambient audible sound. the emission of sounds of such low intensity they do not draw attention to themselves, or it is a state of having ceased to produce sounds. This latter sense can be extended to apply to an absence of any form of communication, whether through speech or any kind of medium. As I said earlier, true absolute silence is the absence of any vibration, of any energy. Anything else is a level of quiet. The only way to get to absolute silence is at the temperature of absolute zero, when there's no molecular or even subatomic motion. Silence in danger. As in my poem, animals will cease moving and will become quiet when they sense danger. Joseph Giordano has suggested that in social animals, including humans, silence can be a sound of danger. Many social animals produce seemingly haphazard sounds which are known as contact calls. These are a mixture of sounds accompanied by their everyday business, for example, foraging and eating, and they are used to maintain audio contact with members of the group. Giordano has suggested that human humming could have been a contact method that early humans used to avoid silence. According to his suggestion, humans find prolonged silence distressing, suggesting danger to them. This may explain why lone humans in relative sonic isolation feel a sense of comfort from humming, whistling, talking to themselves, or having a TV or radio on. And in music, music inherently depends on silence in some form or another to distinguish from other periods of sound and dynamics. For example, most music scores feature rests. As we found out in 4 minutes and 33 seconds, a whole song of rests. In spirituality, silence is often a metaphor for inner stillness. A silent mind, freed from the onslaught of thoughts and thought patterns, is both a goal and an important step in spiritual development. This inner silence is not about the absence of sound. Instead, it's understood to bring one in contact with the divine, the ultimate reality, or one's own true self, one's divine nature. Many religious traditions imply the importance of being still in our mind, quiet for spirit, and for transformative and integral spiritual growth to occur. Now, not only silence, but think of bells and singing bowls. Think of the chant, Those aren't silence, but they tend to be cleansing sounds to help us remove ourselves from the rest of the world around us. Silence also has other important values. Silence isn't simply relaxing for the brain. In one study of mice, it was found that listening to silence for 2 hours every day prompted the subject's brains to grow new cells in the hippocampus, which is related to our brain's memory abilities. While new cell growth doesn't always improve health benefits, in this case, the new cells did become new functioning neurons within the mice's brains. In other words, silence could make you a little smarter. So, what do we hear when there's nothing to hear at all? George Prochnick, an author of In Pursuit of Silence, went in search of the quietest place in the world and eventually found himself in the basement sanctuary of the Trappist New Melloray Abbey in Iowa. The monk who showed him the way warned him, Prochnick writes, that the silence of the room was so intense it was unlikely to take him outside of his comfort zone. Some people from big cities, the monk added, find themselves physically unable to remain in the chapel for even 5 minutes. Well, as it turned out, it wasn't as quiet as it might have been. There was another monk in the room, a man sitting with his legs wide apart, his hands on his thighs, breathing quite loudly. But that doesn't seem to have disturbed Prochnik's sense of the deep silence. The monks, he observed, listened to silence for self-knowledge. Far from being out of his comfort zone, he was actually disappointed when he had to leave. Silence, or the approximation of silence, peaceful quiet. What are the effects of sound? Odds are right now, you're hearing something. If your windows are open, you might hear the breeze. You might hear a siren. You might hear the clicking of a clock. It's seldom that our worlds are fully silent. It's common knowledge that the jarring sound of a jackhammer, the loud blast of a rock concert can damage our hearing. But that's not the only type of harmful noise. There are actually two other kinds of everyday noise that can be bad for us. One is excessive noise, like being near an airport. The other is simply the general noise around us, such as conversations and interruptions from colleagues in the workplace. I found this fascinating. Distractions and interruptions are such a common part of our workdays, we don't even think about them as excessive noise anymore. It's often more obvious we don't hear the noise of distractions around us at work than when we do. We aren't even paying attention to them. A study at the University of California, Irvine found that knowledge workers, now, I don't know what a knowledge worker is. We can all kind of imagine what that might be. But they found that knowledge workers have focus periods of only 11 minutes on average in between interruptions. So if you need to focus, work is pretty much the worst place you can be. Between interruptions, distractions, background noise, general lack of calm and quiet, the noise of the office can be harmful. With the world around you, the bustling street out the window, and again, that can be visual noise, and something distracting you every 3 minutes, it's almost impossible to create anything of value. The destructive part of noise. But there are helpful parts of noise. Some individuals having the sound of music in the background can actually increase their focus. For others, silence is the best route, so they can become fully immersed in what they're doing. So it depends on each of us. No matter who you are, sound will affect your focus. The question is, how? The way the brain works is by billions of neurons that communicate to each other through electronic waves. As these neurons fire, they can be affected by external environment around them. For example, if you have music on when you exercise, your body and mind will be prone to working out harder. According to Dr. Jeffrey Thompson, sound waves can affect the brain waves either positively or negatively. What's more, the 4 types of brain waves, alpha, beta, delta, and theta, are prone to helping you get in sync with any music or sounds around you. So relaxation, rhythms will affect us. White noise can also provide a soothing and relaxing background noise, which can maximize your overall focus. When you're interested in improving your ability to concentrate, these different types of white noise can provide the stimulus your brain needs by delivering just the right amount of sound without the distraction of lyrics or intense musical beats. Each and every one of us has a differently wired brain, and sound will affect us differently. So it's up to you to find out what works best for your focus. Silence, white noise, your favorite sounds, your favorite songs. We tend to ignore the power of sound and how it can affect our mood. Marketers definitely know how to manipulate our mood by using certain sounds and music to influence our behavior. And this next little bit really fascinated me. The writer says, I recently read up on the world's most addictive sounds. The number one addictive spot goes to the sound of, any idea? What do you think it might be? What would be the most addictive sound? Let's see how close you are. The number one spot goes to the sound of a baby giggling. The most addictive sound is the sound of a baby giggling. Shopping malls may play upbeat music to keep us moving and buying, and restaurants may often play slow music to encourage us to eat slowly and savor the food. Unless it's rush time for the restaurant, and you'll notice then that their music is louder and faster because they want to get you in and out. So any sound can affect your mood, but knowing which sounds help and hurt, well, you need to look at these. The 3 tips. Number 1, identify the sounds that frustrate, annoy, and stress you out. If you hate the noise of phones ringing, put it on vibrate. If chatting coworkers are bothering you, try using earplugs or listening to soothing music. Number 2, identify the different sounds that make you happy and relaxed. Some examples might be the sound of falling rain or the sound of a favorite recording. And 3, find music that puts you in a good mood. Songs have the power to unlock distant memories. Your inner ear contains a spiral sheet that the sounds of music pluck like a guitar string. This plucking triggers the firing of brain cells that make up the hearing parts of your brain. At the highest station, the auditory cortex is just above your ears. These different firing cells create the conscious experience of music. Different patterns excite other cells, and these associate the sound of music with feelings, thoughts, and past experiences. I've experienced this a number of times. When my parents were in a nursing home, I would go down regularly, and I would play about half hour to 45 minutes of songs that they grew up with. After a lot of these little sessions, someone from the staff would come and say, Bruce, that's the first time I've seen so-and-so say anything or sing. Because the music triggered a deep memory. Music has a power to really get into our subconscious, into old memories. They said, this is the first time so-and-so has moved to even clap when we got some rhythms going. The power of music to get into our deepest core, even when the rest of our memory may not be working. Our body is 70% water. It's a perfect medium for sound to travel through. So the healing of, let's say, musical bowls that are used in different ways of healing. They take a musical bowl, put it on your body, have it produce its sound, and it'll tune your body to that sound to help the relaxation and healing. Our bodies use this. Dr. Mitch Gaynor, Director of Oncology at the Cornell Cancer Prevention Center, states, sound can redress imbalances on every level of physiologic functioning and can play a positive role in the treatment of virtually any medical disorder. Bowls are teachers. Let's not reduce the healing that takes place only to science. We have already seen that healing is predicated on spiritual awakening. Friday morning, I woke up early for some reason, 6 o'clock, much before my usual time. So I snuck out of the bedroom, grabbed some clothes, snuck out so I didn't wake up Marie, I didn't wake up Coda. Heated up a cup of coffee, and went outside to sit in relative peace and quiet. Was it silent? Absolutely not. Birds and squirrels. Birds singing, the squirrels chasing each other around. I could hear traffic, school buses. Our neighbor next door was outside, coughing. The breeze and the leaves were moving quietly. Visually, the hummingbird. There's a feeder about 5 feet from me, and there's the hummingbird. Dragonflies flitting around. I have a fascination of dragonflies. Thinking back millions of years when dragonflies had wingspans of over 6 feet. So I'm fascinated by the fact that these are prehistoric creatures. And I watch them flying around, fascinated. For me, that's a shiny object. Or a squirrel, okay? That's what distracts me. The sun was out enough that I could see the seeds blowing down. Almost like rain at times. Everything coming down. A dragonfly again. Butterflies and moths. The visual sound, the visual noise. Was it cacophony, crazy? No. Was it settling and quiet? Very much so. Did I feel relaxed? Yeah, definitely. So to go back to my original questions. Silence can be comfortable or uncomfortable depending on where you are. Sound can be harmful or distracting depending on what's going on. Loud sounds can hurt our hearing. Medium sounds, distracting. Quiet sounds can be helpful, but it can also, for some people, be distracting. So back to my original question. When is silence comfortable or uncomfortable for you? What makes it that way? And number two, where is or was your best place for contemplation, for connecting to your spirituality? And for that one, I'll answer that first. My favorite place was Camp Unistar, which is why I am wearing my Camp Unistar sweatpants.
Pajamas.
Pajamas, I call these sweatpants. They're lightweight. At Camp Unistar, I get up fairly early, go to the kitchen, grab a cup of coffee, and go out to the dock. Quite often, I was the first person there. I would sit and watch. A little bit of waves moving. A loon calling. Some mornings there's fog, and the fog would lift and move. I would see different parts of the reeds over here, part of the reeds over there, showing up and disappearing. The sailboats would rock back and forth, and the tack would go clank on the mast, clank, very quiet and peaceful. I could have sat there for hours if I needed to just totally concentrate. Quite often someone would come out and do yoga quietly in the same place because of that same quiet. So for me, the loons, the waves, the sailboat rigging, the fog shifting, Camp Unisar was a really great place for quiet and contemplation. Where is yours? Where do you find relaxation? Again, raise your hand, or you can just sign in.
Or use the chat feature.
Yep. Okay, Lynn?
Lynn, go ahead.
For me, it's always in the garden. Just, working in the garden, hearing the breeze, hearing the birds. That's so renewing for me.
Thank you. Yes, that is very peaceful time. Thank you.
Looks like a peaceful puppy.
Mm-hmm.
Janice.
Yes.
Then Polly.
Believe it or not, one of the most peaceful places for me is in my living room, in my rocker, with the back door to the deck open. And there is just such a feeling of peace when the temperature is the right temperature, which could be anywhere from 60 to 85. Even though neighbors might be talking, I have a sense that I'm alive, that I'm not alone, that there are other people, there are other animals, there are other breezes that are out there. It's one of my favorite activities.
Thanks, Janice.
Thank you, Janice. Polly, then I think Noah.
I'm one of those who finds silence very disturbing. I during these times where I've got my air conditioning on in my house, like today, of course, I find the silence provokes anxiety. So I always have my iPod going, which I'm lucky enough to have one with over 3,000 songs on it. And it just continually changes. And the mood of the songs that are on there influences me, and most make me have a feeling of safety in my house and a feeling of settled. I also do a fair amount of lip syncing, and I do a fair amount of dancing. So it's a good thing I'm alone in my house. So.
Well, like one of the readings I had, it talked about you can sing in silence, you can dance in silence, you can talk in silence. Yeah. Thank you. Yes.
Got a few in the comments. Beth Strootman said ditto to the garden as a quiet respite. Leslie, quiet walk in the woods. Stephanie McDonald, sitting on the bench out in the wetlands with the little pond and muskrats and fishing herons and bats and the barred owl at dusk. So peaceful.
Then I think, Norma?
Yes, the Mississippi River is my place. And since I no longer have access to a boat, I just drive over there and walk along the river. And there are picnic grounds and people there, but I don't know, there's something about the river that talks to me.
Yeah.
Roger?
Thank you.
Yeah, I have a paddling song that I sing to myself. It's called "Boat Sleek and Small" for my kayak. And so one of the verses goes, "Reaching the shore, I'll go once more paddling." And it's a double meaning because like if I'm, get up and I'm going to go out maybe fishing or something, as I reach the shore, my sense of anticipation is just at the maximum of getting into the boat and getting out into the lake. But also sometimes there'll be big winds come up, big rolling waves, and I'll have the spray skirt on and I'll be concentrating on holding onto the paddle because the wind is really strong. And so in those situations, when I reach the shore, I realize that well, I made it. And so I'll one more time be able to go paddling.
Mhm. Yeah. Thank you, Roger. Yes. Yes.
Richard.
For me, it's walk in the woods, and actually, I live near Long Lake Regional Park, and there are trails off the paved trails that I can go in the woods, and there's just nobody around, and it's just quiet. It follows Rice Creek quite a ways, and I can walk along the creek and find that very relaxing.
Mhm.
Thank you, Richard.
A couple things for me. Well, Bruce and I are very different. I like it like absolute silence. He has music on all the time, or the TV drives me nuts. And in the car, if he's driving, the radio is on sometimes. But if I'm driving, no radio. And I know people freak out about that. The other thing I want to say, Lynn, I agree, the garden, that's a good place for me. But one of my most favorite spots is up on the North Shore. I don't know if it's there anymore. It was Gooseberry Cabins at the time. And to see the birds and the terns, the gulls and everything. I loved listening to the gulls. And they would come on the deck of our cabin that was just overlooking Lake Superior. And Elizabeth was 3 at the time. And whenever a gull landed, she goes, "There's Gooseberry! There's Gooseberry! There's Gooseberry!" They were all named Gooseberry. So I have really fond memories of that. So thinking of music bringing up memories, I always think of that, and we need to go up there again.
Mhm.
So maybe we can this summer.
Yeah.
Thank you, Marie.
Mhm.
Not seeing anyone else, I think we will close segment of the service. Thank you all for your comments. Thank you, Bruce.
Thank you.